Hello and welcome to a new 3DQF video. Today we're going to touch on a topic that we get asked all the time, is what is rework and why don't you call it recycled? So rework effectively is our 3D printing filament that we harvest our post-industrial waste to create new filament out of. So it's a process that's used in manufacturing of filament pretty much the world over. Most manufacturers do this. Some of them claim that the filament is recycled because they're using post-industrial waste in it. Some are using external sources of post-industrial waste to supplement the normal feedstock that they use as well. But effectively we're doing no different. Ours is 100% our material, so we're not using any outside source, and we're also not using any more virgin material inside our rework. Our rework is just that, it's our reworked rejects effectively. So what happens during the everyday production of filament is in the morning, the evening, and generally speaking once or twice during the day, you'll get filament that's not made to the correct tolerance. It doesn't pass QC. Now in the morning and the evening it never will, because you've got the line or the production line ramping up and then the production line ramping down at the end of the day, as it both material comes in and material goes away. Sometimes in the middle of the day you can find points where something goes wrong, the filament snaps or just a general operator error, and you'll get some more filament that's not the right size and it needs to be dealt with. So what we do is we save those spools up till the end of the day, and then they get run through a machine which is called a pelletizer. A pelletizer is used in the plastic industry to turn the plastic strand into pellets for further use. It works brilliantly for our application because effectively filament is that. It's a little bit smaller than what a pellet would normally be, but it does the same process. So we run the spools of filament into the pelletizer, and out the back we get the pellets. It's really, really important that we actually have a pellet to do this process. And we won't discuss too much in this video, but another question that we get asked all the time is, can you take back my failed supports and my failed prints and so forth and turn this back into filament? The big sticking point with that is the fact that how it's supplied to us is not in a pellet form, and there's quite a bit of processing that needs to get your support material or failed prints down and back into a pellet. And PLA adds a lot of complexity to that with some of the byproducts that are made during that crushing and shredding process that make it rather challenging for an extruder to use. Thankfully, using our own waste is not as challenging as that. It is more difficult than using a virgin product, which we make the filament out of in the first instance, but we bought all the equipment a number of years ago so that we could harvest our own waste instead of selling it on. And that's quite an important part actually, because post-industrial waste, or the waste that we make, would never be dumped or tipped anywhere. This is a high value material. There's nothing wrong with it, other than in our particular case we don't separate colours, so it's a lot of various different colours. But this product can go on to make a multitude of different things because it's a closed loop, single source industrial waste product. And generally speaking, whenever you find any recycled filament, that's what it is. It's a closed loop, single source of raw material, or more often than not, the manufacturer themselves doing very similar to us and reusing their own internal waste back into the product at a certain percentage to claim recyclability. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'll touch on another video of why I feel it's maybe a little bit misleading to what the consumer and what I would have thought a recycled product actually is. And it also takes away from some manufacturers that really are trying to make a recycled product from a reclamation process, in terms of either harvesting and reclaiming things from the ocean to make filament out of, or the actual reclamation of used plastic and restructuring that plastic so it can almost be a virgin polymer again. But those are whole different subject matters that we can go on to in the future. So when we take our pellet, we place it into a machine called a crystallizer. This crystallizer heats the material up and stirs it at the same time. Now that's really important for PLA because, as we all know, at about 50-55 degrees, the glass transition of the material, it starts to become sticky, or it does in our dryers anyway. What happens then is if you don't agitate it, it will form a large solid block inside the dryer. And at which point it's up to the right temperature, you then can't move it or auger it out of that hopper because now it's a solid block. So the crystallizer's main function is to heat and stir. So when any clumps start to form inside the hopper, they're broken apart as soon as they form. Very strangely, PLA, when you elevate it to about 70 to 75 degrees, it stops becoming sticky again and it becomes a loose pellet. So obviously once you get it to that elevated temperature while stirring it, it breaks apart the clumps and the clumps don't form again. It's at that point it can be moved from the crystallizer to our desiccant drying hoppers. These hoppers then dry an incredibly dry level to take out all the remaining moisture from the actual material. We generally look for a drying temperature point down to 400 parts per million of moisture content within the material before production starts. As a rule of thumb, in our desiccant dryers, that's between 6 and 4 hours worth of drying before we can actually turn it into, or start turning it into filament. There's only one other difference that separates rework at that stage from normal filament, and that's the fact when it comes to the colouring stage. So when the material is removed from the drying hoppers, the very next stage it goes to is colouring. But with rework, we have plenty of colour. So the last thing that we need to do is add more colour to it. And I think it sort of makes the product a little bit more talk aboutable because it changes colour. So it feels a little bit more like a compromise, I guess you could say. We could dye it black if we wanted to, but we'd compromise the material more because we'd be loading it with more colour. But I think there's a certain nicety about using the product in its raw nature, and it does wax and wane and change the colour. So we leave it as is, we don't do anything else to it, and then from there we turn it into filament. The rest of the process is pretty much the same at that. It comes out of the extruder, through the water bath, through the haul-off system which pulls it to the right diameter, and the laser control that measures the diameter of it on both X and Y axis, onto our accumulator, which is an overhead system that allows us to change spools at the end, and then to the winder at the end of the machine. It then gets vac-packed, vacuum seal and a desiccant cartridge put inside, and then moved to warehousing ready for dispatching later on. The nice thing about rework is we do offers on rework. So the most exciting offer is normally when we do it, and to announce that we've done more rework, because we only do it twice a year generally, you get a free roll when your order hits a qualifying level. So that's quite a nice feature. It's recycled material. You can have a play around with it at no cost to yourself. We do also sell it as well. It's slightly cheaper than our normal filament. So that is something that you can purchase, but do bear in mind it's not something that you can really rely on because supply will come and go reasonably quickly. And like I say, we can only have capacity to make it about twice a year. That's generally speaking because of the clean down process that's involved. Not necessarily going to rework, but when we need to get back off rework and back to our virgin material and virgin products again, there's a lengthy clean down process that we need to do. We need to clean all the hoppers, all the vacuum loading system, all the hoses and pipes, and the extruder as a purge as well. So it's quite in depth to do. So we generally try to do 2 weeks of free production time, and that earmarks when we can do rework, and then we come back off it and we go back to a normal virgin product again after a lengthy clean down of all the equipment. So now you've heard all about rework. So I think the best thing to do is to pop a link down in the description at the bottom and go on our website and click sign up for notifications. This way that as soon as we update stock on the website, you'll get a ping to notify you to do it. If it's not been in stock for a while, then more than likely you'll find them in some qualifying purchase and you can get a roll for absolutely nothing. But that's the way to do it. That's the way to see when it's on there. Do remind you, it isn't an available or reliable supply of material, but it is something that you can save a few pounds here and there on when it is for sale, but also get a roll for free just by having a qualifying order. So thank you for joining along today. If you have any questions, pop those down below as well and we'll be sure to answer them. And I think we'll do a future video on recycled filament, or what recycled filament actually is, which will seem nicely off the back of this. And the other biggest question that we ever get asked is, can you take back my failed prints and support material? And we'll discuss why and how challenging that actually is as an industrial manufacturer of filament to actually do. But anyway, that's enough for now. Thank you very much for your time, and most importantly, keep on printing, guys. Thank you.